Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Operation Dignity Workshop series, a series of workshops aimed at providing our clients with independent living skills. Today, we will be covering the topics of resumes. Okay, so before getting into the specifics on resume building, I wanted to first discuss the results of a famous study that was conducted. They found that managers, on average, look at a resume for 6 seconds before making an initial decision on whether or not they're going to contact an applicant or not. So, you can imagine trying to be a hiring manager and looking at something for 6 seconds and trying to make a decision, and it's really not possible. So, to give you an idea of how this works, somebody made a website where you can judge resumes in 6 seconds or less, and you can see how you performed afterwards. So, I recorded a screenshot of myself playing this, and I will discuss what's going on, and you guys can record what you believe as we're going, and you can see what the results are. So, starting out, those are the rules. And then on the first one, as you can see throughout, it's difficult. I mean, we can kind of just look at the format, some very basic things. I thought we should keep the first one. This one, again, it looked pretty decent, but I really didn't have much time to think about it, and so I decided to drop that one. And this goes on. I'm gonna fast forward because you don't have to watch the whole clip. If you want to, this PowerPoint will be available and you can totally go and watch it. But you should also go to the website yourself and look it up. Just look up 6 second resume test and you'll be able to find it. But let me fast forward to the end. And I only got a 3. And I'm someone who works on resumes all the time. But again, it's very hard. You're looking at something and you don't have much time to really truly evaluate anything about somebody in that time period. So I was just trying to give you an idea, and especially on websites like Indeed, where there's a lot of applicants for jobs, it can really be going up against a lot of people, and it just takes away from some of your attention. So first up, I wanted to do some general resume tips. So resume do's and resume don'ts. So first, have consistent formatting. Like I said, you used on that last exercise. A lot of the resumes that looked like they were good were in fact ones that had really good formatting. They were easy to look at with a quick glance, get the important information that you needed, and there wasn't a ton of typos. There wasn't clear empty spaces or weird spacing in any lines. So those were always the better ones. And then next up, we have leave open space. So again, we want your eyes to be able to flow on the page. So you don't want to not have information and leave a ton of space, but you want to have the reader's eye be able to flow where it's not just blocks of text and it's hard for them to actually get the information they need. Next, use consistent grammar. If you're talking about positions you worked in the past and you want to use the past tense, make sure you just stick with the past tense and keep it consistent. Like, I did this, I carried out these responsibilities, don't just say, oh, carrying out, carries, carried, and like switch the tense constantly. It just gives a little bit of a confusing message. Next up is use action verbs. You want to make sure that you're showing that you're actually doing things at your job, that you're not just like writing a list of responsibilities, but things that you did. And if you have any questions, I'm going to include a list of action verbs in the resources, but you can always just look that up yourself, and there are tons of resources out there for that. Next is proofread and edit. You can never do this too much. You can never stop doing this. You should constantly be updating your resume and changing it for specific positions, but have other people look it over. Everything, more eyes, the better. Next, we're going to switch over to the don'ts column, and the first is don't have typos. This one seems obvious, but you know, again, the proofreading and editing is a key because if you have a typo and a recruiter or a hiring manager is looking at your resume and they have to decide between two people and they see yours has a typo and the other one doesn't, they might not want to go with yours because you maybe don't have attention to detail, quote unquote. Next is don't have run on sentences. We would like you to, be concise. This is, again, supposed to be a snapshot of who you are. You can explain more in depth exactly what was going on in an interview. It's supposed to just be a good little blurb into what you did at every job. Next is don't repeat yourself. So, again, it's easy to want to, especially if you've worked a lot of the same jobs, to want to just put the same thing over and over. But again, use that list of action verbs. Think of other creative ways to word things. And if you really can't think of anything, try to maybe even look up examples of that people have done for a position like this. But overall, try to avoid repeating yourself. Next is don't overshare. Again, you don't have to put that you were fired from a position because you didn't show up or something like that. You can avoid doing things that might reveal certain things. If you worked, say, from January of 2024 to February of 2024. You don't have to put January to February. You could just put 2024 to 2024. So, unless you're specifically asked something like that, you don't necessarily have to always divulge that information, which leads me to the last point. Don't lie. You can stretch the truth, and you can certainly make certain things seem a lot better or sound better than they were, but don't just straight up say that you can do something that you can't, because if you show up to the job and then you can't actually do it, you probably won't last long, and then you'll be looking for another job again. So next I'm going to go over some types of resumes. So the first type here is a chronological resume. This type shows jobs in reverse chronological order. This is the classic resume example that you're probably familiar with. It's, good one if you have consistent work history. You can see all the stuff that I was talking about before on the resumes, do's and don'ts. There's good white space. Your eyes can flow well. The bold points draw you to what the company that you worked for was, what position it was, your education, skills, all that. So the idea is focusing on your strengths here. And then with the chronological, the idea is that, you've been consistently employed and people can see your trail of employment. Again, you're detailing major responsibilities of each position that you held, compared to another type of resume where you're going to more so just talk about your overall skills. This one, you're going to be, looking at exactly what you did in each specific position. Next, you can highlight how you have grown over time, especially if you have worked two different roles within the same company. But the idea is that, again, with the chronological, you could see your lower one, your third job you have here was an entry level position, and then maybe the one in the middle was a mid level one, and then the one at the top you became a supervisor. So it can really demonstrate that you've been growing and learning in your time working too. Next up is a functional resume. This one is good for if you have gaps in your resume. So if you were, unemployed for a long time, if you were, unfortunately like in prison or something like that, this could be good for emphasizing things that you're good at rather than necessarily your explicit work experience. It's also good for if you're trying to change industries. If you're, say, someone who has been in computer science for a really long time and now you want to get into teaching, but some of those skills may not necessarily directly translate on a resume if you put your job responsibilities like in a chronological one. But here you could demonstrate, oh, in this role I did these things that would translate to teaching. It gives you a little bit more flexibility to make it more universal across positions rather than so industry specific. And lastly, you can demonstrate your skills if you don't have work experience. Like I said, it's good for gaps in a resume, but also, especially for a lot of veterans, the only work that you have done if you're first getting out of your service is military, because a lot of people get in when they're young, and that doesn't exactly translate super well to civilian resumes a lot of the time. It can be hard, especially if you have a position where it's kind of difficult to explain exactly what you were doing to people. So it's very helpful for situations like that where you either are have a big gap in your resume or you're just trying to build work experience at all. Next up, I'm going to go over some of these final resume tips. So first up, don't stress yourself out too much. It's the job search is a long process and it'll be tricky. and there's going to be a lot that goes on. But again, if you keep these things in mind, you proofread, you make sure that it flows well, your grammar is consistent. I think you're gonna get something, and you got to keep in mind that, like I said, a lot of people are applying for things nowadays. There's a lot of AI keyword matching, which relates to my second point: tailor your resume for specific jobs. So, if you are looking for a job in customer service and you know that the job listing itself lists all these things that they'd want you to do, go and add them to your resume and create a different version of that resume that you can use for that specific position. A lot of jobs nowadays use computers or AI or something to do a keyword match, and if your resume doesn't have the number of keywords that are required on it to match the job description, then your resume is just going to immediately get flagged and it's not even going to reach a hiring manager. So, tailoring your resume for specific jobs really can go a long way. And then lastly, try to not be intimidated, especially if you're someone who, like I said, doesn't have that work experience or it's been a long time. It's a daunting process, but again, you have support. You can lean on people. You can always contact us. You can contact your case manager. Really, just make sure that in the process you're taking time to relax. You're thinking about what your goals are overall, and you just try to focus on what you can do short term to build towards a long term future. And that's all. So if you guys have any questions, you can always email me as my email here, or call me or text me at the phone number listed here, or you can scan a QR code and make an appointment with me directly. I hope that all helps, and this was the workshop on resumes. Thank you.